So today I accidentally started a fire in my kitchen. I left a pot boiling on the stove. I was making me some macaroni and cheese, and I accidentally left it on the stove too long, and the water boiled out, and the pot was flaming hot, right? Um, so when I could smell that something was off, I went into the kitchen. I was like, oh crap. So I turned the stove off. And very, very quickly, I got the pot holders to move the pan, but then I realized that all the aisles had something on it already, and the kitchen sink was full of dishes. And so I was like, oh my God, where am I going to put this? Meanwhile, um, I wasn't thinking very, very quickly and clearly, apparently, and the pot holders were actually too thin for the type of heat that was on the pot, and it actually was starting to burn my hands. And so my left hand, unfortunately, experienced the most heat burn. And so when I released the handle, I also dropped the pot holder directly on the electric um, stove, the outlet on the stove, and the stovetop. And the right hand holding the other side of the pot was beginning to get unbearably hot. Um, Not realizing that I had actually dropped the left hand pot holder directly on the burner, it started a fire. And so, in a moment of panic, I reached with my left hand to move it from the burner so that it wouldn't completely catch the whole entire stovetop on fire. And while I did that, um, it burned me. Like, I sustained some burns. Thankfully, they weren't um, burns that covered my whole hand, but they were kind of splattered and splotchy on the outside of my hand. I didn't sustain any type of, damage or injury of burns on my palms or anything, which I thought was weird. But anyway, so when I dropped the pot holder, which was still on fire after it burned me, to the floor, it was still on fire. And so I go to the sink. Finally, in a complete panic, I just went to the sink and dropped the pot that I had in my right hand into the sink, turned on the water, found another cup, and just started pouring water on the flaming hot um, pot holder that was burning on the floor. And thankfully, my floor, I've got floor pops on my floor that can withstand up to like 170-degree heat. It's considered like heat resistant, fire resistant, up to like 178 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's one of the reasons why it did not burn like through like the floor and the tiling on the floor. Anyway, so I put it out. It happened so fast. And I remember I was calling my son upstairs when the fire was burning on the floor, and it was actually burning on the stovetop. And that eventually, once the residue had kind of like burned off of the surface of the burner, that fire extinguished itself. So there was no more concern with that. But it left me like in shock because my hand definitely sustained some burns. So I've got a couple of different, gauzes around it just to keep it in ointment. I went to ER and stuff like that. But the reason I brought this up is because I've been feeling like and experiencing some really, I don't want to say awkward things, but they're distracting things. And prior to this happening, which now it might not even be connected at all. It could just be I was absent-minded after, maybe I didn't get enough rest. Like, there's a whole bunch of trickle effects, so it doesn't necessarily mean that it's all like a spiritual happenstance or some sort of a spiritual thing or whatever. So I'm definitely not trying to make it all like that. because I will admit that some of my sleeping habits has been a little disrupted um, from just like a chain of events of me recognizing that I do need more self-care. So I was in the process of thinking about all the different ways that I could increase my self-care and remember me and think about me a little bit more. And some of those things also included just making sure that my environment cultivated peace and calmness and things like that. And for the most part, my place does that for me. Everywhere that I go, or especially since I've been here the longest duration of time, almost 6 years, I've been able to do that piece by piece, little by little, room by room, corner by corner, create the space, clean it up, and do that. So I was in a season now where I was doing it again. It cycles in and out of me choosing to clean up and all that type of stuff. So I had just spent time yesterday, like a really good creative kick of energy came to me, and I was like, while I have some funds to allocate towards this, because this is the season that I'm in, I'm going to go and grab a couple of things to make my living room feel the way I envision it to feel. And I wanted to add a little bit more blue elements into the room. So I'm like, okay, I found like this pretty picture of some like blue water and some floral arrangements in the photo. And I was like, oh, that'd be great. I have a pillow that matched that. So I was just finding ways to kind of like match things together and make it come together. I cleaned up my office area because I need that space to be a little less convoluted with things. I've kind of grown out of the kind of like the collage visual of things on the wall, and I just wanted something a little cleaner. Um, so I was doing all that work to kind of prepare my environment for the type of self-care and rest that I really need, or felt like that I needed. So I think it's just mighty weird though that the day after, which is today, um, I sit down at this clear space, this desk, and I say to myself, okay, well, I'm gonna take some time. Man, I'm hungry. I'm gonna make some mac and cheese, put some water on the stove. Had a quick thought that said, hey, don't forget that it's gonna be here boiling. I'll just be in the next room. And I remember having that conversation with myself, like, you're not gonna forget about it, whatever. I sit down to work on something. Now, this was something that I really did not feel pulled towards to work on. Like, it did not excite me, but it was something that I said that I would do this week for one of my remote jobs. It was something that I volunteered to do. Now, it's paid, but I realized that when I sat down to do it, it did not excite me. It did not make me feel like I wanted to do it, but I was making myself do it. And in that battle of trying to make myself get into it and trying to make myself understand better what it is that I'm doing, and trying to like make some notes about, oh, do I need to ask more questions about this project? It's not adding up, whatever. Time just slipped away. Time totally slipped away from me. And then when I realized the scent in the air was different, I'm like, oh my God, I left this pot on the stove because I'm sitting over here in my cleared out space that I had created so that I would enjoy sitting down doing my work. But I chose to try to work on something that my mind just really couldn't connect with. And because of that, one of the repercussions of that is I forget that I'm supposed to be making me something to eat, like a little snack, a little lunch. This was part of my self-care, making me a little snack or lunch. So once again, I have put my self-care on the back burner to put something else, to make something else a priority. you know? And that may be a small thing to some people, and some people are like, well, dang, Mary, that's a stretch. But I mean, is it really? So anyway, it just gives me something to think about, because one thing I've said before in other videos is that once you start declaring things and like putting things out there and speaking on it, and being kind of absolute and like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm gonna set this boundary. I'm gonna consider me, you know, it's just really funny how these little things can really change. Now I'm sitting here with like little burn marks on my hand. Now I'm not really supposed to be doing too much with my hands anyway. Now, can I technically do it and push myself? Yeah. But I think right now I'm just going to go with what the signs are telling me. The signs are telling me something by this, you know? And I do recall that when the fire was going on, I felt so disconnected from the moment. And I'm like, okay, is this a trauma response? Is this a stress response? Is this like a shock response? Or is this normal? Like, there's fire on the stove, and there was two things that were happening. One, it was disbelief. And then the second thing was, all I was trying to do was make something to eat. Now there's a fire in here, and now I'm also trying to think about what is the best way for me to go about this. Do I just drop the pot anywhere at this point? Like, yeah. So then it was like, do I just go? Is this? Do I get the? Is this when you get the extinguisher? When do you get the? You know, I mean, and this is a literal fire, and so I'm like, okay, Neri. At some point, I want to try to unpack that. Again, I'm not trying to make everything like a spiritual thing. Like, this could definitely just be like, I just had an absent-minded moment. And I could have. I mean, I've had a moment like that before. I had a pot on the stove. And it was like, oh, oops, it's happened. It happens to a lot of people, so I'm not the only one. But I'm just still a little, I guess, shaken up by it. Um, yeah, I mean, I really feel a little shaken up by it, and I feel like there's something to unpack, something more to unpack in that for me. So no, I decided like I'm not doing any other work online. You know, I had designated this day to be more relaxed. Yes, I had planned to do some online work at some point, but did it have to be while I was cooking? You know, I mean, it seems like a normal thing. Oh, while I'm cooking, let me go ahead and do this. But was it the best, the smartest, the wisest thing to do? Was it even necessary for me to go trying to tap away on the computer at that moment? Really, I didn't. I didn't. And then it goes back to this whole other blog post that I really want to get into about multitasking, and how that's not working anymore, folks. That is no longer serving us. That stopped serving us a long time ago. I mean, from the moment that multitasking was even a thing, when it was created by us as a way to be productive, it was a disaster from the beginning. And so there's that piece. And it just reminds me, it's like the more I think like, dang, I'm figuring this out, then life shows you like, you've got some more stuff to figure out. You know, there's more things for me to simplify in my life, where I felt like, dang, I've simplified enough. Like, can't get any more simplified than this. And then I learned like, actually, yeah, you can. Anyway, thankfully I'm fine. My son has helped take care of us today. He went with me to the hospital. He drove me back home. Um, he made dinner tonight, and he'll make dinner tomorrow, and he'll take care of the dishes until my hands can be fully submerged. Things like that. And I'm now being forced now to care for myself because now I have an actual ailment, a physical ailment. man, that can be a whole nother conversation. It's like, we don't want to wait until we become so absent-minded that we start injuring ourselves, and not really thinking clearly through, crisis situations and things like that. I ain't trying to go that deep today, but just wanted to point that out. Like, okay, all right, I've just sat my ass down for the day. It's done. It's over. I hear you loud and clear, universe. And thank goodness that I was able to react or respond. Even though it felt chaotic in the moment, I responded in a way that kept me alive. So, gosh. So I'm thankful for that, regardless of what led up to it. Damn. Life. Damn.